The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with their usual soft hiss. Ambassador Jake Morrison walked through them, carrying a simple data pad in his right hand. His footsteps echoed quietly on the polished stone floor as he made his way toward the administrative desk at the far end of the room. The chamber was busy that morning. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the curved seating areas, their voices mixing together in dozens of different languages. The tall, blue-skinned Altarians argued loudly with the crystal-covered Vortani about mining rights in the Outer Rim. The insect-like Zephyrians clicked and buzzed as they discussed trade agreements. Nobody paid much attention to the lone human. Walking across the floor, Jake reached the administrative desk where Clerk Vexstar sat sorting through the morning's paperwork. The four-armed alien looked up with mild interest as Jake approached. "Good morning, Ambassador Morrison," Vexter said. "In the common tongue? What brings you here today?" Jake placed the datapad on the desk. "I need to file this document with the council records." Vexter picked up the pad with one of his lower arms, while continuing to sort papers with the other three. He glanced at the screen and his expression didn't change. "Formal withdrawal from the Galactic Alliance," he read aloud. Effective immediately. He looked up at Jake. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke," Jake said quietly. "Humanity's leaving the Alliance." Vexstar set down his other papers and read the document more carefully. "This says all human colonies will be evacuated within the next 72 hours. That's impossible. You have settlements on 17 different worlds." 71 hours and 36 minutes now," Jake replied, checking his watch. "We started this morning." The clerk stared at him. "But why? What happened?" There was no warning, no formal complaint filed with the council. Jake shrugged. "Decided it was time to go." "You can't just leave," Vexter sputtered. "There are procedures. Committees must review withdrawal requests. The full council needs to vote." "Article 47 of the Alliance Charter," Jake said calmly. "Any member species may withdraw with proper notification." "I'm giving you that notification now." Before Vexstar could respond, Jake turned and walked back toward the doors. The clerk watched him leave, then looked down at the datapad again. He read the document 3 more times before he finally understood what he was holding. 3 star systems away. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the transport ship New Hope. Through the large viewing window, she could see the planet, New Terra, spinning slowly below them. The world looked peaceful from orbit, its green continents and blue oceans making it one of the most beautiful planets in this part of the galaxy. "Status report," Lisa called out. Lieutenant Ben Murphy checked his console. "All agricultural centers have been shut down. The automated farming systems are offline. Seed banks and genetic samples have been loaded onto the cargo ships." "What about the processing plants?" "Dismantled and packed," Murphy replied. "Nothing left behind that can be reverse engineered." Lisa nodded. New Terra had been humanity's largest farming world. For the past 30 years, it had produced enough food to feed 3 neighboring alien civilizations. The Altarians, Centauri, and miners all depended on crops grown in New Terra's rich soil. Now those fields would return to wild grass and weeds. "Sir?" Another officer called out. "The last civilian transport just cleared the atmosphere. Human residents have been evacuated." Lisa looked down at the planet one more time. Empty cities dotted the continents below. Streets that had been filled with human families just hours ago now stood silent. Parks where human children had played were already being reclaimed by native plants. "Take us to the next pickup point," she ordered. Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Watson was finishing her own evacuation on the Zephyrian homeworld. She stood in the main hospital of their capital city, watching her medical team pack the last of their equipment into transport cases. Dr. Watson, a Zephyrian physician, buzzed nervously beside her. "Surely you're not taking all the surgical equipment? We have patients who need operations." Amy looked at the insect-like alien with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Dr. Zixtol. All human medical equipment goes with us, but I've left complete records of every procedure we've performed here. Your doctors should be able to continue the work." "But we don't understand half of these techniques," Zixtel protested. "Your surgical methods are completely different from ours." "And what about the crystal rot treatment?" "Only human doctors know how to perform those procedures." Amy sealed the last equipment case. "The treatment protocols are all in the database." Study them carefully. She walked toward the exit, her team following behind her. Zixtel flew after them, his wings beating rapidly. Please, Dr. Watson, at least leave some equipment behind, or people will die without proper medical care. Amy stopped at the hospital entrance and turned back. For the past 15 years, human doctors have been requesting permission to train more Zephyrian physicians in our techniques. Every request was denied by your medical council. He said human methods were too primitive. For your species to learn, Zixtel's compound eyes reflected his distress. That was a mistake. We see that now. Perhaps, Amy said softly, but it's too late to fix it today. She walked out of the hospital and climbed into the waiting transport. Through the window, she could see dozens of Zephyrian doctors standing in the hospital courtyard, watching helplessly as the human medical team departed. On the other side of the galaxy, engineer Pete Sullivan was putting the finishing touches on his own assignment. He stood in the control room of Relay Station 7, one of the most important communication hubs in the Alliance network. Banks of computers hummed around him, processing billions of messages every second and routing them across hundreds of star systems. Are you sure about this, Pete? Asked his assistant engineer Carol Davis. When we shut this down, 17 systems will lose contact with the galactic core. Pete checked his tablet one more time. Every human-built relay station goes offline at exactly the same time. We've been maintaining this network for 40 years, and most aliens don't even know how it works. Carol shook her head. They're going to be angry when they realize what we've done. Let them be angry, Pete replied. He entered the shutdown sequence into the main computer. Maybe they should have listened when we asked for better funding and more support staff. The relay station's main power core began winding down.
Ow.
The constant hum of the computers gradually faded to silence. Warning lights flashed red as system after system went offline. Within minutes, the station that had connected dozens of worlds to the rest of the galaxy was nothing more than an empty shell. Pete and Carol gathered their personal belongings. They walked to the docking bay where their transport waited. As their ship pulled away from the station, Pete looked back at the dark structure floating in space. 40 years of work, he said quietly. They never appreciated it anyway, Carol replied. Back in the council chambers, the afternoon session was beginning. Chancellor Vix of the Triumvirate called for order as the delegates took their seats. The usual business began. Trade disputes and territorial arguments and requests for military assistance. Clerk Vexstar approached the Chancellor's podium with Jake Morrison's datapad in his hands. He waited for a break in the discussion, then cleared his throat. Chancellor Vix, I have an urgent document that requires the Council's attention. Vix looked down at him with mild annoyance. Can it wait until the regular filing period? I'm afraid not, sir. The humans have formally withdrawn from the Alliance. Few delegates turned to look at Vexstar, but most continued their private conversations. The human delegation seats had been empty for most of the morning anyway, which wasn't unusual. Humans often skipped the boring procedural sessions. Withdrawn, Vix asked. What do you mean? Ambassador Morrison filed the paperwork this morning. All human colonies are being evacuated as we speak. But the chamber began to quiet down. Delegates turned their attention to the front of the room. The Altarian senator laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Evacuated. The entire human population? That's impossible. According to this document, they began the process 12 hours ago, Vexstar replied. Chancellor Vix took the datapad and read it carefully. His expression grew more serious with each line. It says they'll be completely gone within 72 hours. 68 hours now, Vexstar corrected. The chamber erupted in confused chatter. Some delegates laughed at what they thought was an elaborate joke. Others began accessing their personal communication devices to contact human acquaintances. On various worlds, Senator Crix of the Hegemony raised one of his tentacles for attention. Even if this is real, so what? Humans have only been part of the Alliance for 50 years. We managed perfectly well without them before. Many delegates nodded in agreement. The crystalline Vortani representative spoke up, his voice sounding like grinding glass. Good riddance. They were always questioning our decisions and demanding equal representation. Perhaps now we can return to proper order. Chancellor Vix handed the datapad back to Vixstar. File it with the standard withdrawal procedures. If the humans want to leave, that's their choice. 3 months had passed since the humans left. Senator Crix of the Hegemony sat in his office reviewing the morning reports, and his mood was getting worse with each page. The first serious problems were starting to show themselves across the galaxy. The communication device on his desk chimed with an urgent message. He touched the screen and saw the worried face of Governor Talvin from Kepler Prime. "Senator Crix, we need immediate assistance," the governor said, his voice shaking with fear. "The food riots are getting worse. 3 cities are burning, and my security forces can't control the crowds." Crix leaned back in his chair. "Riots? Over food?" "Kepler Prime has always been well-fed." "Not anymore," Talvin replied. "The agricultural systems have been failing for weeks. The automated farms that the humans left behind stopped working properly. We don't know how to fix them." "Get your own farmers to handle it," Crix said with annoyance. "Our farmers don't understand human farming methods. The soil treatment is different, the crop rotation is wrong, and the harvesting machines won't respond to our commands. We're losing entire fields every day." Crix ended the call and immediately contacted his aide. "Get me a report on food production across all Alliance worlds. Find out what's happening with the human agricultural systems." The report arrived 2 hours later, and it was worse than he had feared. New Terra, which had been the galaxy's largest food producer, was completely abandoned. The automated farming systems had shut down when the humans left, and nobody else knew how to restart them. 17 other agricultural worlds were experiencing similar problems. The total food production in the galaxy had dropped by 60%. In just 3 months, billions of beings across dozens of worlds were facing starvation. Crix called an emergency council session for that afternoon. The chamber filled quickly as word spread about the food crisis. Chancellor Vix took his place at the podium, looking more concerned than usual. "The situation is serious," Vix announced to the assembled delegates. "We're facing food shortages on multiple worlds. The human agricultural systems are failing without proper maintenance." Senator Yixstar of the Centauri stood up. "Surely we can figure out how to operate simple farming equipment." "How difficult can it be?" "More difficult than you might think," replied Dr. Zolanox, the Alliance's chief agricultural advisor. "Human farming methods are completely different from our traditional approaches. They use complex soil treatment, genetic modification of crops, and automated systems that we don't understand." "Then we'll go back to our old farming methods," Yixstar said. "That won't work," Dr. Zolanax explained. "The human farms changed the soil composition on many worlds. Traditional crops can't grow in that soil anymore, and the human crops need specific nutrients that our fertilizers don't provide." The chamber fell silent. The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. Meanwhile, on the outer rim of the galaxy, pirate attacks were increasing every day. Captain Vexenol of the Alliance patrol fleet stood on the bridge of his ship, watching a distress signal from a merchant vessel under attack. "How long until we reach them?" he asked his navigator. "For hours at maximum speed," the navigator replied. "For hours?" Vexenol slammed his fist on the console. "The attack will be over in 30 minutes. His pirates will be long gone by the time we arrive." His communications officer looked up from her station. "Sir, we're receiving 17 more distress calls from this sector alone. Pirates are attacking everything that moves." Vexenol studied the tactical display. Red warning markers showed pirate activity across hundreds of star systems. Before the humans left, their fast patrol ships had kept the pirates under control. Human vessels could reach any point in their assigned sectors within an hour. "Are the human patrol routes now?" he asked. "Abandoned," his tactical officer replied. "All human ships disappeared with the evacuation. Nobody took over their routes." The communication device crackled with another distress call. "This is Merchant. Vessel Golden Star. We're under attack by 6 pirate ships. Please send help immediately." Vexenol closed his eyes. There was no help to send. His ship was too far away, and it was the only patrol vessel in a sector that had once been protected by 12 human ships. "Log the distress call," he ordered, quietly, and add it to the casualty reports. Back on the galactic core worlds, the financial systems were falling apart. The Central Banking Authority's main computer complex hummed with frantic activity as technicians tried to solve problems they didn't understand. Director Kexmal stood in the center of the main operations room, watching dozens of screens showing error messages and system failures. Red warning lights flashed constantly, and the air was filled with the sound of alarms. "Status report," he called out to his chief technician. "The quantum encryption protocols are failing, tech specialist." Nalvin replied. "Transaction processing is down by 80%. The main trading systems crashed 3 times today. What about the backup systems? They're all human-designed. When the humans left, they took their access codes with them. Can't get into the core programming." Kexmal walked over to a wall display showing the galaxy's financial networks. Entire sectors were showing red error indicators. Trade routes that had processed billions of credits in daily transactions were now completely offline. "How long before the economy collapses completely?" he asked. Nalvin checked his calculations. "At this rate, maybe 2 weeks, 3 at most." "And there's nothing we can do? Not unless we can find someone who understands human financial programming? The systems are too complex for us to reverse engineer quickly." Kexmal stared at the failing displays. The humans had built and maintained the galaxy's financial infrastructure for 40 years. They had made it so efficient and reliable that everyone else had forgotten how the old systems worked. On the research station orbiting Proxima Central, Dr. Vexmill was facing his own crisis. The dark matter energy grid that powered 60% of the galaxy's civilizations was beginning to show signs of failure. "The containment fields are becoming unstable," his assistant reported. "Power output is dropping on stations 7, 12, and 19. Dr. Vexmill studied the readouts. "When was the last maintenance check on those stations?" 4 months ago. Human research teams used to handle all the maintenance scheduling, and now we don't have anyone qualified to work on dark matter containment systems. The technology is too advanced for our current staff." Dr. Vexmill felt a chill run through his body. Dark matter energy was the foundation of modern galactic civilization. If the grid failed, entire star systems would lose power. Billions of beings would die. "How long before the containment fields fail completely?" he asked. "Difficult to say. The human safety protocols are still running, but without proper maintenance, the systems will degrade rapidly. Maybe 6 months, maybe less." Dr. Vexmill activated his emergency communication link to the Council. "This is Research Station Alpha. I need to speak with Chancellor Vix immediately." "The Chancellor is in emergency session," came the reply. "Ain't. Can schedule you for next week." "This can't wait until next week. The dark matter grid is failing. If we don't get help soon, half the galaxy will lose power." There was a long pause. "I'll get the Chancellor on the line." 5 minutes later, "Chancellor." Vix's face appeared on the screen. He looked tired and stressed. "Dr. Vexmill, what's this about the power grid? The dark matter containment systems are becoming unstable. We need the human research teams back, or we need access to their maintenance protocols." "The humans are gone," Vix replied. "Find another solution." "There is no other solution. Only human scientists understand this technology well enough to maintain it safely." Vix's image flickered as the communication link suffered interference. "Do the best you can, Doctor. The Council has bigger problems to deal with right now." Connection ended, leaving Dr. Vexmill staring at a blank screen. He turned to his assistant with a grim expression. "Prepare emergency shutdown procedures for the entire grid. If we can't maintain it safely, we'll have to shut it down before it explodes. But sir, that will leave hundreds of worlds without power, better than destroying them completely." Back in the council chambers, the emergency session was entering its 8th hour. Delegate after delegate stood up to report new problems. The Altarians were facing medical emergencies without human doctors. The Vortani mining operations were failing without human engineering support. The Zephyrians were dealing with transportation breakdowns as their ships couldn't navigate the human-designed hyperspace routes. Chancellor Vix listened to each report with growing despair. The scale of the crisis was beyond anything he had imagined. In just 3 months, the carefully ordered galaxy was falling apart. Senator Crix stood up to address the chamber. We need to face facts. We became too dependent on human expertise. They were involved in every major system that keeps our civilization running. It's not our fault, Senator Eukstar protested. The humans never told us how important their work was. They tried to, another delegate pointed out. Remember all those requests for cross-training programs? All those proposals to teach other species their techniques? We rejected every one of them. The chamber fell silent. Many delegates remembered those proposals. At the time, 6 months after the humans disappeared, the galaxy was dying. Captain Zelanix of the Alliance Security Force stood on the bridge of his patrol ship, staring at the wreckage floating in space before him. What had once been a peaceful merchant convoy was now twisted metal and debris scattered across several kilometers. How many ships, he asked, his sensor operator. 12 cargo vessels, sir. All destroyed. No survivors. Captain Zelenix clenched his fists. This was the 3rd convoy attacked in the Vega sector this week. Pirates were getting bolder, hitting larger targets and killing everyone they found. This used to be Captain Frank Miller's patrol route. His tactical officer said quietly, kept this whole sector safe for 15 years. Where is Captain Miller now? Zalanex asked, though he already knew the answer. Gone with the rest of the humans, sir? Zalanex studied the tactical display. Red markers showed pirate activity across hundreds of star systems. The human patrol fleet had once kept order across vast stretches of space with their fast, well-armed ships. Now, those routes were empty, and the pirates knew it. Sir, we're receiving another distress call, the communications officer reported. Slave traders are attacking a civilian transport in the Delta system. How long to get there? 6 hours. At maximum speed, Zalanex closed his eyes. 6 hours was too long. The attack would be over, the civilians captured and sold into slavery before his ship could even reach the system. His patrol vessel was designed for different duties than the human ships. It was slower, carried fewer weapons, and couldn't cover the same territory. Log the distress call, he ordered, and send a message to command. Tell them we need more ships in this sector, sir. Command says there are no more ships available. Every patrol vessel in the fleet is already stretched beyond capacity. Zalanex turned away from the tactical display. In the old days, Frank Miller's rapid response team would have reached the Delta system in less than 2 hours. The human captain had known every smuggler, every pirate hideout, every dangerous asteroid field in his territory. His ships had been equipped with the latest weapons and the fastest engines in the galaxy. Now the slave lords operated with complete freedom, raiding civilian settlements and capturing thousands of beings every week. The carefully maintained peace that had existed for decades was crumbling into chaos. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian homeworld, Dr. Zixtel buzzed frantically around his laboratory. The insect-like physician was trying to develop a cure for a strain of Zephyrian flu that was killing his people by the thousands. Any progress? Asked his assistant, Dr. Nixvell. None, Zixtel replied, his wings drooping with exhaustion. This new strain is completely different from anything we've seen before. Our traditional medicines have no effect, retorted the laboratory window. They could see smoke rising from the cremation centers, where the bodies of flu victims were being burned around the clock. The death count had reached over 2 million and was still climbing. What about the human research? Nixville asked.
Dr. Emma Stone was working on a universal vaccine before they left.
Her research notes are incomplete, Zixtel said. She was only halfway through the development process when the humans evacuated. Without her expertise, I can't understand how to finish her work. Zixtel flew over to a computer terminal and pulled up Dr. Stone's research files. The screen showed complex molecular diagrams and genetic sequences that made no sense to him. Human medical science was so different from Zephyrian approaches that it might as well have been written in an alien language. We could try to contact the humans, Nixville suggested. Surely they would help if they knew how many of us are dying. That Council has been trying to reach them for months, Zixtel replied. There's been no response. The humans have vanished completely. Another report came in from the medical centers. The flu had now spread to 6 other Zephyrian colonies, and the death rate was accelerating. At the current pace, their entire species might be extinct within a year. Zixtel stared at the computer screen, showing Dr. Stone's unfinished research. Somewhere in those files was the cure that could save his people, but he didn't have the knowledge to unlock it. On the mining world of Titan 7, the atmospheric processors that kept the colony alive were failing. Chief Engineer Volkar stood in the main control room, watching error messages cascade across dozens of monitors. Oxygen levels are dropping in sectors 5 through 12, his assistant reported. The atmospheric recycling system is shutting down. Volkar studied the diagnostic readouts. When was the last maintenance check on the primary processors? 8. The human engineering teams used to handle all major maintenance, and the backup systems, also human designed. We don't have the access codes or the technical manuals. Volkar felt panic rising in his chest. Titan 7 was a harsh world with a poisonous atmosphere. Without the atmospheric processors, the colony would become uninhabitable within days. 20 million beings lived on this world, and there weren't enough transport ships to evacuate them all. How long before complete system failure? He asked. Maybe 48 hours. The safety protocols are still functioning, but without proper maintenance, the whole system is breaking down. Volkar activated the emergency communication system. This is Titan 7 Colony Control calling Alliance Command. We have a critical emergency. Our atmospheric systems are failing. The reply came back 15 minutes later. Titan 7, this is Alliance Command. We have no engineering teams available to assist you. You'll have to solve the problem locally. Don't have the expertise, Volkar responded. We need human engineers, or at least access to their technical databases. The humans are gone, Titan 7. Find another solution. The communication link went dead. Volkar stared at the failing control systems around him. In 36 hours, the atmospheric processors would shut down completely. The colony's entire population would suffocate unless they could fix systems they didn't understand. Begin emergency. Evacuation procedures, he ordered. Get the civilian transports ready. We'll save as many as we can. His assistant looked at the evacuation schedules. Sir, we can only evacuate about 3 million people before the atmosphere fails. What about the other 17 million? Volkar didn't answer. He couldn't face the math that condemned most of his people to death. Across the galaxy, similar disasters were unfolding on dozens of worlds. The terraforming systems that maintained life on marginal planets were failing without human maintenance. Agricultural worlds were reverting to their original hostile atmospheres. Mining colonies were losing life support. Billions of beings were being displaced as their homes became uninhabitable. The hyperspace communication network had collapsed completely in many sectors. Worlds that had been connected to the galactic community for centuries were now isolated and alone. Trade agreements fell apart when merchants couldn't confirm payments. Military responses to emergencies arrived weeks too late. On the frontier worlds, an even greater threat was emerging. Admiral Rextel of the Defense Fleet stood in his command center, studying the latest reports from the Outer Rim. Swarm, known as the Devourers, had been quiet for decades, contained by a carefully maintained defense line. Now they were moving again. How many ships have they sent? He asked his intelligence officer. Our scouts report at least 50,000 vessels, came the reply. But they could have more. We've lost contact with most of our observation posts. Admiral Rextel studied the tactical display. The Devourers were ancient enemies, machines that consumed entire worlds to build more ships for their fleet. For the past 40 years, they had been held back by a network of defense stations and patrol routes. The humans had been key architects of that defense system. What's the status of the outer defense line? He asked. Failing? The automated defense. Stations are running out of ammunition, and we don't have the codes to resupply them. The early warning network has been offline for 2 months. And Admiral Victoria Shaw's tactical plans? We have copies of her strategic documents, but they're incomplete. She took the detailed battle plans with her when the humans left. Rextel felt a chill run through his body. Admiral Shaw had been the Alliance's greatest military strategist. Her defensive plans had kept the Devourers contained for decades. Without her expertise, the Outer Rim worlds were defenseless. How long before they reached the inhabited systems, he asked. At their current speed, maybe 6 weeks. And sir, there's something else. They're not just moving randomly. They seem to know exactly which defense stations are offline and which patrol routes are abandoned. How is that possible? Unknown, sir. But their movements suggest they have detailed intelligence about our current weaknesses. Rextal stared at the tactical display showing the advancing Devourer fleet. The red markers were moving steadily toward the populated sectors of the galaxy. Once they broke through the outer defenses, nothing would stop them from consuming world after world. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he ordered. Begin emergency mobilization. Pull every available ship back to defend the core worlds. Sir, that will leave the Outer Rim completely unprotected. The Outer Rim is already lost, Rextal replied grimly. We're fighting for the survival of our entire civilization now. 1 year after the humans vanished, Chancellor Vix stood in his private office, staring at a galaxy map filled with red warning markers. Each marker represented a failing system, a dying world, or an advancing enemy fleet. The scale of the disaster was beyond anything in recorded galactic history. His aide Kelmore entered the room carrying a stack of urgent reports. Sir, the casualty numbers from this week. Vix took the reports but didn't read them. He already knew they would be terrible. How many worlds have we lost now? 43 have been completely evacuated due to system failures. 18 more are requesting emergency assistance we can't provide. And the Devourer fleet has consumed 7 Outer Rim colonies. Vix closed his eyes. In just 1 year, the greatest civilization in galactic history was crumbling. Any word from the search teams? Nothing, sir. We've sent expeditions to over 200 star systems. No trace of human settlements anywhere. The search for humanity had become the Alliance's top priority. Every available ship had been assigned to look for the missing species. They had checked old human colony sites, explored uninhabited systems, and followed every possible lead. But the humans had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. Sir Kelmer said carefully, perhaps it's time to consider other options. What other options? Vix asked bitterly. Surrender to the Devourers? Watch our civilization die while we wait for the food riots to consume what's left. Before Kelmer could answer, the communication device chimed with an urgent message. The face of Admiral Rextal appeared on the screen, his expression grim. Chancellor, we have a situation. One of our deep space exploration teams has found something. Vix felt a spark of hope. Human settlements. No, sir. Something else. Something that might explain why we can't find them. 20 minutes later. Vix was aboard a transport heading for the Outer Rim Research Station where the discovery had been made. The station orbited a dead star system that had once been home to a human colony called New Boston. Dr. Kellenox, the team leader, met Vix. At the docking bay? The scientist looked excited and worried at the same time. What did you find? Vix asked. Evidence of how the humans disappeared so completely, Dr. Kellenox replied. Come with me. They walked through the station to the main laboratory. On the central table sat pieces of metal and circuitry that Vix didn't recognize. We found these buried beneath the former human settlement, Dr. Kellenox explained. At first, we thought they were just construction debris. But when we analyzed them, we discovered something remarkable. He activated a holographic display showing the metal fragments. These aren't just building materials, they're components of a massive portal system, a hyperspace gateway, much more advanced than anything we've ever seen. The humans could use these to travel vast distances instantly, far beyond the range of our fastest ships. Vix stared at the display. How is that possible? Our scientists have been working on portal technology for centuries without success. Human science developed differently than ours, Dr. Kellenox said. While we focused on traditional hyperspace drives, they were apparently working on quantum tunnel technology. According to these fragments, they could open gateways to other galaxies. The implications hit Vix like a physical blow. Other galaxies? It explains why our search teams haven't found them. They're not hiding in our galaxy. They've left it. Completely. Vic sat down heavily in a nearby chair. If the humans had traveled to another galaxy, they might as well have ceased to exist. The Alliance had no ships capable of intergalactic travel. Even if they knew which direction the humans had gone, it would take thousands of years to reach them. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Intelligence Chief Yarkol was making his own disturbing discoveries. He had been reviewing old Alliance security files, trying to understand how humanity had managed such a coordinated evacuation without anyone noticing their preparations. "What have you found?" asked his assistant analyst Nelrix. "The humans were much more organized then. We realized," Yarkol replied. "Look at this." He activated his computer and showed Nelrix a series of documents. "These are communication records from human settlements over the past 5 years. I've been analyzing the message patterns, and I found something interesting." Kind of patterns? Hidden coordination signals. The humans were using their normal business communications to send coded messages about evacuation planning. They've been preparing to leave for years. Nelrix studied the data. How long have they been planning this? At least 5 years? Maybe longer? Every human settlement was part of the plan. Every human in a key position knew their role in the evacuation. Yarkol pulled up another file. Is even more disturbing. Kyle Morgan, their former intelligence chief, had detailed maps of our entire security network. He knew the location of every classified facility, every military base, every government installation in the Alliance. How did he get that information? We gave it to him. Over the years, humans worked their way into positions throughout our government and military. We trusted them with everything because they seemed so helpful and cooperative. Nelrix felt a chill. You think they were spying on us? Think they were protecting themselves. They gathered intelligence about our capabilities and our weaknesses. When they decided to leave, they knew exactly how to do it without us being able to stop them or follow them. The scope of human planning was becoming clear. This hadn't been a sudden decision triggered by some political dispute. It had been a carefully orchestrated withdrawal planned over many years. The humans had known they would eventually leave, and they had prepared for every possibility. On the former human world of New Terra, Professor Zolonix was discovering the true extent of human integration into galactic society. She had been assigned to catalog everything the humans had left behind, hoping to find something useful for the Alliance's survival. "The agricultural data is incomplete," she reported to her research team. "The humans took all the genetic information for their modified crops." "What about the medical research?" asked Dr. Velke. "Same thing." Dr. Nancy Wells and her team had established educational programs on over 300 worlds. They were teaching alien children advanced mathematics and science using human methods. When they left, they took all their teaching materials and research data. Professor Zolanox walked through the empty university buildings where human teachers had once worked. The classrooms were bare, the laboratories stripped of equipment, the libraries emptied of books. "I'm starting to understand something," she said. "The humans weren't just living among us. They were teaching us, healing us, feeding us, protecting us. They were taking care of the entire galaxy." "What do you mean?" Dr. Velke asked. "Look at the evidence. Human doctors were treating diseases that alien physicians couldn't cure. Human teachers were educating children across hundreds of worlds. Human farmers were feeding billions of beings. Human engineers were maintaining the technology that kept our civilization running." She pulled up a data file on her portable computer. Chef Danny Parker might have seemed unimportant, but his food preservation techniques prevented spoilage across the entire galaxy. Without his methods, we're losing 30% of our remaining food supplies to contamination. One chef had that much impact? One chef who understood the biochemistry of dozens of different species? When he left, he took knowledge that had taken decades to develop. Professor Zolanox sat down on the steps of the empty university. "We didn't just lose human settlers when they left. We lost our teachers, our doctors, our protectors, our providers. We lost the people who made our civilization work." The search for humanity continued, but with each passing day, it became more desperate and more hopeless. Explorer ships ventured into the deepest regions of space, following any signal or trace that might lead to human settlements. They found nothing. Captain Nextall commanded one of these search vessels. He had been exploring the far edge of the galaxy for 6 months, checking every star system in his assigned sector. "Anything on the sensors?" he asked his science officer. "Negative, sir. This system is completely empty. No signs of habitation, no energy signatures, no communication signals." Captain Nextall studied the star charts. This was the last system. In his sector, and like all the others, it showed no trace of human presence. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we're receiving a message from Search Fleet Command. Put it through." Admiral Kexenall's face appeared on the screen.
Captain!
"Nextall, you're ordered to return to base immediately. The search operation is being suspended." "Suspended? But we haven't covered even half the galaxy yet." "We're out of time," the Admiral replied. "The Devourer fleet has broken through the outer defenses. We need every ship to defend the core worlds." Nextall felt his heart sink. "What about finding the humans?" "The humans are gone, Captain. They've been gone for a year, and we have no idea where they went or how to contact them. We have to face reality." The transmission ended, leaving Nextall staring at empty space. The search was over. Humanity had vanished completely, taking with them any hope of saving the dying Alliance, as search ships across the galaxy received similar orders to return home. The truth became undeniable. The humans had planned their departure too well. They had covered their tracks too thoroughly. 2 years after humanity vanished, the Galactic Alliance was dying. Chancellor Vix stood in what had once been the Grand Council chamber, but now only 30 delegates remained. The rest had fled to their homeworlds or died in the countless disasters that plagued the galaxy. The chamber itself showed signs of decay. Several light panels had failed, casting dark shadows across the empty seats. The air recycling system made strange noises and nobody knew how to fix it. Even the capital world was falling apart without human maintenance crews. "Status report," Vic said wearily to the few remaining officials. Senator Crix raised one, trembling. "Tentacle. The Devourer fleet has consumed the Altarian homeworld. 2 billion dead. Their mechanical ships are now only 3 systems away from the galactic core." "What about our defense fleet?" Vix asked. "Admiral Rextall is dead," replied General Nalkex. Da. His flagship was destroyed trying to stop the Devourers at Proxima Station. "We have less than 200 ships left in the entire fleet." Vix closed his eyes. 2 years ago, the Alliance had commanded over 50,000 warships. Now they barely had enough vessels to patrol a single star system. "Food situation?" he asked. "Critical," reported Dr. Velmer. "We're down to emergency rations on most worlds. The agricultural collapse is complete. Best estimates give us maybe 3 months before mass starvation begins." The irony wasn't lost on any of them. The worlds that had once fed the entire galaxy now lay empty and barren. Nutera, which had produced enough food for billions of beings, was now covered in dead fields and rotting crops. Nobody had been able to restart the human farming systems. "The economic situation?" Vix asked, though he dreaded the answer. "The galactic economy collapsed 6 months ago," replied Finance Minister Kexral. "Most worlds have returned to basic barter systems. The banking networks that process trillions of credits are completely offline." Vix looked around the nearly empty chamber. "How did we let this happen?" "We thought we were superior," Senator Crix said quietly. "We thought humans were just young primitives who got lucky with some useful technology. We never realized they were holding our entire civilization together." "They tried to warn us," added Dr. Velmer. "All those proposals for cross-training programs, all those requests to teach other species their techniques. We rejected every one because we thought they were trying to expand their influence." "We were fools," General Nalkex admitted. "Human military doctrine was decades ahead of ours. Admiral Victoria Shaw's strategies kept the Devourers contained for 40 years. Now they're sweeping across the galaxy like a plague, and we can't stop them." The chamber fell silent, except for the struggling air recycling system. Outside the building, they could hear the sounds of riots as desperate civilians fought over dwindling food supplies. Suddenly, the main communication console activated with an incoming transmission. The delegates looked at each other in surprise. Long-range communications had been unreliable for months. Clerk Vexstar, one of the few administrative staff still working, answered the call. This is Alliance Central Command. The voice that responded was calm and familiar. This is Ambassador Jake Morrison.
Yeah.
The chamber erupted. Delegates jumped to their feet, shouting questions and demands. Vix raised his hand for silence, his heart pounding with desperate hope. Ambassador Morrison, Vix said carefully, "Where are you?" "That's not important right now," Jake replied. "What's important is whether you're ready to listen." "Listen to what?" "To the truth about what you've become." The transmission crackled with interference, but Jake's voice remained clear. 2 years ago, we offered you partnership. We wanted to work together, to share our knowledge and learn from yours. Instead, you treated us like useful servants. Senator Crix leaned forward. "We made mistakes. We admit that. But our civilization is dying. Billions of beings are suffering. Surely you can't just watch us destroy ourselves." "We watched you dismiss our warnings about the Devourers," Jake said coldly. "We watched you reject our offers to cross-drain your people on critical systems. We watched you treat us as expendable while becoming completely dependent on our work. Please," Vix begged. "Tell us what you want. What will it take for you to come back?" There was a long pause. When Jake spoke again, his voice was softer, but still firm. "We don't want anything from you, Chancellor. The question is what you're willing to give up. Give up your pride, your assumption that age equals wisdom, your belief that some species are naturally superior to others." Dr. Velmer stood up. "We understand that now. Humans were never our servants. You were our partners, and we were too arrogant to see it." "Partnership requires equality," Jake replied. "It requires mutual respect. It requires listening when someone tries to help you, even if they're younger than you are." "We're listening now," Vix said desperately. "Are you... 2 years ago, Dr. Carl Stevens warned your environmental council that climate systems were failing. On dozens of worlds, his recommendations were rejected because the council thought human science was too simplistic. How many billions died because you wouldn't listen to his warnings?" The chamber fell silent. Dr. Stevens' predictions had been terrifyingly accurate. Entire worlds had become uninhabitable exactly as he had forecast. Elizabeth Turner's economic reforms could have prevented the financial collapse, Jake continued. But your banking authority dismissed them as primitive human thinking. How's your economy doing now? Finance Minister Kexerl looked down at his feet. Turner's rejected proposals were sitting in his office, gathering dust while the galaxy's economy crumbled. "We were wrong," Senator Crick said. "We were wrong about everything. We thought we were the teachers and you were the students. But you were teaching us all along." "Teaching you what?" Jake asked. "How to solve problems," Vix replied, understanding. Finally dawning, how to adapt. How to work together across species lines. It's how to build instead of just maintaining what already existed. And what did you do with those lessons? "We ignored them," Dr. Vel_Mar admitted. "We took your solutions but refused to learn your methods. We wanted the benefits of human innovation without changing our own thinking." Jake's voice was quiet now. "Do you understand why we left?" "Because we made you feel unwelcome," Vix said. "Because we took everything you gave us and treated you like second-class citizens in return?" "Because you made it clear that you valued our work but not us as people," Jake corrected. "You were happy to have human doctors save alien lives. But you wouldn't give those same doctors equal representation in medical councils. You relied on human engineers to maintain your infrastructure. But you wouldn't listen when they warned you about systematic problems." The truth hung in the air like a weight. The Alliance had created a system where humans did most of the essential work, but had the least political power. They had been treated as valuable tools rather than equal partners. "What do we do now?" Vix asked quietly. "That depends," Jake replied. "Are you asking because you want to save your civilization, or because you want to save your people? What's the difference? Your civilization was built on the assumption that older species naturally deserve more power and respect. It was designed to maintain existing hierarchies and resist change. That civilization is dying, and maybe it should. And our people, your people, can be saved. But not by rebuilding the same system that created this disaster. If you want humanity's help, You have to be willing to build something completely new. Senator Crick stood up slowly. What would that look like? Equal representation for all species, regardless of age or previous status. Shared decision-making on all major policies. Respect for different approaches to solving problems. And most importantly, the humility to admit when you're wrong and learn from others. That would mean dissolving the alliance as we know it, General Nalcax pointed out. Yes, Jake agreed. It would mean creating something better. The delegates looked at each other. Everything they had built over thousands of years would have to be abandoned. The carefully maintained power structures that had defined galactic civilization would be torn down and rebuilt from scratch. And if we refuse, Vix asked, then you face the devourers alone. You watch your world starve, see your civilization collapse into barbarism, and you do it all without any help from us. The choice was stark and final. Change everything or lose everything. Vix looked around the chamber at the few remaining representatives of a dying civilization, all in favor of accepting Ambassador Morrison's terms. One by one, every hand was raised. There was no debate, no discussion, no political maneuvering. They were beyond such luxuries now. The vote is unanimous, Vix announced. We accept. Then we'll be in touch, Jake said. Understand this. We're not coming back to save the Alliance. We're coming back to build something new with whoever is willing to change. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in silence. Outside, the riots continued, and the Devourer fleet advanced. But for the first time in 2 years, there was hope. 3 days later, the first human ships appeared in orbit around the capital world. They brought food, medical supplies, and technical experts. But they also brought conditions. Every world that wanted human assistance had to agree to the new governmental structure. Every species had to accept equal representation and shared power.